Banks are looking at emerging markets for growth in the future, and many banks are looking at Peru. And the head of Citibank in Peru is Jose Antonio Blanco. Thank you indeed for joining us. May I ask you first for your outlook for Peru over the next few years?
We have a very independent central bank. We have reserves for more than 18 months worth of imports. And we have a very controlled and well-predictable FX rate in Peru. So that is one of the reasons why if you go into Peru, you don't run an FX risk actually. Then you need to look at the fiscal policy that the central bank, the central government has been working in order to reduce our debt. Right now it's only 22% of our GDP worth of debt, and it's reprofiled in an average between 13 to 14 years. Actually 49%, almost 50% of our debt is in local currency. So that is another good reason just to make sure that we are not running a huge risk against economic turmoil going on around the world. Our infrastructure deficit must be seen as a half full glass of water. It's worth around $40 to $50 billion. Although we are in opposite sides of the world, I feel a very close relation with the Asian case and the Chinese case, because you have been investing in infrastructure over the last years, and that has been a really strong agent for growth. If you take a close look at our population, more than 50% of our population is below the 40s. And that is something that happened to Japan and the United States, you know, the famous baby boomers that back in the 80s had between 30 to 40 years old. And that was, to many of the analysts, the main muscle for those countries to grow. Right now, Peru is experiencing the exact same phenomenon.
And so does that mean that you're overweight on Peru, for example, for bonds?
We believe that the bond market's opportunity is really gonna boom in the next following months and years to come, because the projects in Peru that used to be 10 years ago between $50 to $100 million size, typical size, now are around 500 to 1 billion. So the only way you can finance those kind of projects is by issuing international market bonds. To me, there is a great opportunity for Asian investors, for example, because what we have seen in the recent years is that when Peruvian companies, and Peru is an investment-grade country, go out to the markets and raise funds, typically the investors come from the US or Europe. We're not seeing still much inflow from Asian investors. So that is a very good opportunity actually to start looking at Peru every time we go to the markets and start investing in our bonds and our investment opportunities.
So how do you see business flows developing between Peru, and particularly, I guess, in Lima, and Hong Kong?
We're seeing pretty much increase in terms of flows. Actually, if you take a look at the world and you go back 10 years, typically we were used to see flows from the emerging markets to the developed world, right? Now what we're seeing is that it's going to shift, and it's starting to shift between emerging countries. And actually, in the case of Peru, 25% of our exports go to the Asian markets, and China and Hong Kong are destinations that are starting to represent a larger share of that exports. Specifically, I'm talking about mining products. I'm talking about fishing products, not much in the textile industry, but agribusiness. As a representative of Citibank in Peru, I'm starting to receive large delegations of Chinese and Hong Kong companies that are starting to come and learn a little bit more about Peru, because they see that those kind of countries are the countries where you need to be invested, because the only way you will assure the supply of your basic products that you will need in the future. Hong Kong is like a gateway to get into Asia, right? And we're pretty confident that once that starts to happen, we will get a lot of support from Asian financial companies here in Peru, financial institutions such as, the banks that operate here in Asia, in Hong Kong specifically. So it's not happening, that's true, but we see that will start to show up in the next 3 to 5 years.